Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Control, or DTSC's public workshop on personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane. My name is Chin Xiao, and I'm a public participation specialist with DTSC. On behalf of DTSC, we are glad you are participating today. The intention of this workshop is to hear DTSC's proposal to list personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane as priority products and solicit public feedback. You will have an opportunity to ask questions and give comments after today's presentation. We encourage you to use CalSafer to document your comments. This will help ensure that your comments are accurately recorded and publicly available. Next slide, please. If you have a question or comment during this workshop, please use the Q&A feature to type in your question or comment. Use the raise hand feature if you wish to ask your question or make your comment verbally. For those of you calling in, you may press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to unmute. We ask that you do not use the chat function. We will answer your questions during the Q&A session. We will take comments during the public comment portion. Next slide, please. Today's agenda includes this introduction and overview, opening remarks by Robin Christensen, Safer Consumer Products Deputy Director, Safer Consumer Products, or SCP framework, overview of product and chemical profile for personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane, a question and answer plus public comment period. Lastly, closing remarks by Andre Algazi, Branch Manager of the Chemical and Product Evaluation Branch. Today's presentation slides will be available on the SCP's workshops and upcoming events webpage. The recording of today's workshop will be posted to the SCP website. Next slide, please. The written public comment period opened on July 12, 2024, and closes at 11:59 p.m. on September 3rd, 2024. The link to profile is listed here, along with the link to submit comments via CalSafer. Next slide, please. I would like to introduce SCP's Deputy Director, Robin Christensen, to give the opening remarks. Robin?
Chin. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual public workshop on 1,4-dioxane in cleaning and personal care products. I'm Robin Christensen. I'm the new Deputy Director for the Safer Consumer Products Program, or SCP, and it has been a long road leading to this workshop. The SCP program had started investigating 1,4-dioxane more than 5 years ago. And back in May of 2019, we issued a background document summarizing our preliminary work on this chemical. We also held 2 public workshops the summer of that year, where we shared our initial findings on the presence of 1,4-dioxane in consumer products, 1,4-dioxane's hazard traits, notably carcinogenicity, the potential for exposure to 1,4-dioxane via drinking water and adverse impacts that can result, including impacts to California water treatment agencies that generate recycled water. In our earlier work, we were grateful for the help from industry in understanding how 1,4-dioxane finds its way into consumer products and how that can be mitigated. We also appreciated the assistance of California's water treatment agencies, which helped us to understand the end-of-life impacts of 1,4-dioxane. The document that we're discussing today, the product chemical profile, provides our detailed rationale for listing several cleaning and personal care products that contain 1,4-dioxane as priority products. 1,4-dioxane is not intentionally added into consumer products. When it's present, it is as a contaminant. And one reason it has taken a while to release the document we're discussing today is our work to develop an alternatives analysis threshold. Under our regulatory framework, when a chemical of concern is present as a contaminant, manufacturers whose products contain the chemical at a concentration below the alternatives analysis threshold are exempt from conducting the alternatives analyses. These manufacturers need only submit a notification and documentation that their product meets the AAT, or Alternatives Analysis Threshold. You'll be hearing from two of our technical experts today. We'll start with Dr. Rob Rossi, who will provide an overview of the Safer Consumer Products Program framework. This will provide some useful context for our discussion of the product chemical profile. And then Dr. Ann Cooper-Doherty will give you an overview of our work on 1,4-dioxane and what we've learned about its presence in cleaning and personal care products, potential exposures, and the potential harm that can result from those exposures. Ann Cooper will also discuss our next steps toward regulating some 1,4-dioxane containing consumer products. Thank you again for joining us at today's workshop, and we look forward to hearing your comments after today's presentations. And I'll turn it back to Chin.
Thank you, Robin. I would like to introduce Rob Rossi, SCP Senior Environmental Scientist, who will be presenting the overview of the Safer Consumer Products Program. Rob?
Thanks, Jen. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to cover a quick overview of the Safer Consumer Products Program framework. So in a nutshell, SCP regulates consumer products that are in commerce in the state of California through a four-step process. In the first step, we compile a list of chemicals from lists of chemicals that have been listed as potential concern by various authoritative bodies. Using that list, we move into step 2, where we prioritize product chemical combinations that may cause harm to people and/or the environment. Once we do so, our proposal moves to an external review, and then rulemaking begins. This step involves a large amount of public feedback. After we have prioritized and then listed a product chemical combination through rulemaking, it becomes a priority product. And this rulemaking may include an alternatives analysis threshold, or AAT, as Robin has mentioned, and we will be covering this in further detail in a future slide. At that point, manufacturers of the product chemical combination must notify DTSC and then evaluate safer alternatives using an alternatives analysis, or AA. This report is submitted to DTSC and becomes publicly available. Finally, depending on our assessment of the AA report, there are a wide range of regulatory responses that DTSC can use that are needed or as needed to protect public health and/or the environment. And for reference, as the red arrow indicates there, we are currently in step 2. Next slide, please. So step 2 itself is comprised of several smaller steps. And this starts with an initial screening and public engagement on a topic, moving into writing a product chemical profile and proposing a priority product, and then finally initiating rulemaking. Initial public engagement for personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane occurred during workshops that were held in 2019, and these concerned background documents that we released. We recently released our draft product chemical profile, and we are currently holding our pre-rulemaking workshop. After this workshop, the next steps will include proposing one or more personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane as priority products, sending the profile out for external scientific peer review, and then finally initiating rulemaking. Any comments that we receive today will be reviewed prior to the external scientific peer review. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ann Cooper, who will get into the details of our draft product chemical profile. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Rob. So now we'll go over a little more details about our proposal to list personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane as priority products. So just one more time, what are we proposing? We are proposing to list personal care and cleaning products containing 1,4-dioxane as one or more priority products. So the product chemical profile that we release will provide the scientific basis for all associated rulemakings, and we will propose individual priority products for rulemaking as we get to them. So to start off with, let's go over some basics of 1,4-dioxane. It's a small, relatively straightforward molecule, and because of that, it is highly soluble and persistent in water. It's also volatile, but it is unlikely to volatilize into air once it's been dissolved in water. It doesn't stick to solids, in part because of its mobility, and so therefore it doesn't stick to things like filters or particulates. And because of this, it makes it hard to remove through most standard forms of water treatment. In terms of hazard traits, the one it's most well known for that Robin alluded to is carcinogenicity, which can result in liver and kidney tumors. There's also other hazard traits such as hepatotoxicity, which can result in liver necrosis and degeneration, nephrotoxicity, which can result in tubular degeneration in the kidney, respiratory toxicity, which can result in inflammation and irritation, as well as ocular toxicity, which can result in irritation. So there's two different relevant work plan categories at play here. The first is cleaning products, including laundry detergents, dish detergents, and surface cleaners, as well as beauty, personal care, and hygiene products, including shampoo, body wash, and hand soap. And these are categories that include products that are widely used. They have high potential to contain 1,4-dioxane, primarily because they suds up and have bubbles in them, because they contain chemicals that are likely to be contaminated with 1,4-dioxane, and they are released down the drain after use. So now I wanted to get into our case for the potential for exposure to 1,4-dioxane from these products, as well as the potential for significant or widespread adverse impacts. Those are our two key prioritization criteria that we have to meet when proposing priority products. So the first is the 1,4-dioxane presence in products. As has been mentioned, 1,4-dioxane is a contaminant. It's formed in the production of ethoxylated surfactants and other raw materials. It is not intentionally added. Because of that, it is often not included in product labels. So it can be hard to figure out if it's there or not. We do know that it can be frequently associated with ingredients that end in or contain this ETH, something like sodium lauryl sulfate. That's not always the case, but it can be an indicator. And it does mean that it can be hard to know if 1,4-dioxane is in a product, and if it's there, what the concentration might be. So I know Robin alluded to it a bit, but just wanted to reiterate a note on contaminants. When a chemical is present in a product as a contaminant, DTSC must specify what we call an alternatives analysis threshold, and I'll refer to that as an AAT. Manufacturers of products with 1,4-dioxane concentrations below this AAT are exempt from the alternatives analysis requirements that Rob alluded to in this SCP framework overview. And instead, they can submit what we call an alternatives analysis threshold notification. And we'll put a link in the chat for a training that we've put together on submitting an AATN, as we call it, because that's come into play for our work on toluene and nail products as well. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we move forward, but just wanted to make sure that you understand this AAT concept a little bit, because it'll be referenced in other slides. So to understand which products are likely to contain 1,4-dioxane and at which concentrations, we looked at the available lab studies that were already out there. We did see that there was a decent amount of variation in the concentrations of 1,4-dioxane. Many product categories were underrepresented, or it seemed like the data might be kind of out of date. We weren't sure how representative it was of current products. We did see this orange line is as 1 ppm, which is the concentration that we are proposing for the AAT in products. We see that some products seem to be able to get below that 1 ppm level, but there are also products that are beyond the 1 ppm concentration. So because we weren't quite sure based on existing lab studies, we decided to undertake our own lab study. We sampled over 150 personal care and cleaning products over a wide variety of products. So this is a plot of all the products that we tested. You'll see if you look at the x-axis, it's skewed because we've got two samples that are way over 100 ppm, which was quite surprising. That was a lot higher than we had expected to see concentrations, but that did indicate that there are some products out there that do have pretty high concentrations of 1,4-dioxane, and definitely higher than we had originally expected to see. So to be able to see the data a little bit better, we've truncated the axis in this plot so that the x-axis only goes up to 10 ppm. And here you can see, once again, as we had seen with some of those existing lab studies data, that we have a span of data, and some products are able to get below that 1 ppm or even down to non-detect levels, and some products continue to be above that 1 ppm level. And I did want to call out that these products were sampled in the 2019 to 2020 timeframe. This is before the New York regulations went into effect, which many of you may be aware of, limit the concentration of 1,4-dioxane in products that are sold in New York, which is probably had an impact on products that are sold here as well. So we know that products are also marketed towards different cultural groups. So we did sample some products targeted to those in the Latinx and Asian community. We did try and target products as well that were sold to those of African descent. We had some trouble, this was back in 2020, so we had some trouble finding products that were targeted to that community as well as that met our sample criteria. We needed them in liquid form. So we had a little bit of trouble. So we were only really able to find shampoos marketed to those with coiled hair. So that's why that one looks a little bit different. Excuse me, but you can see that products marketed to Latinx or Hispanic consumers had higher levels of 1,4-dioxane than products marketed to other communities. This is certainly not a representative sample and not indicative necessarily of the whole market, but it does indicate the potential for specific cultural populations to experience higher exposures to 1,4-dioxane and a potential concern there. So a bit more on exposure. This is a conceptual exposure model that we developed for a paper that we published back in 2023. You can see it gets quite complicated, lots of exposure routes there. But the one that we're focusing on here is outlined in the yellow box, and that's the use phase when the products are being used, particularly the potential for dermal, inhalation, and ingestion exposure. The other primary exposure concern is the end-of-life contribution of 1,4-dioxane to the waste stream and ultimately drinking water as these products are poured down the drain. You can see this kind of circularity of the waste stream here as they're poured down and then kind of brought back into drinking water. And then the exposure route there is primarily through ingestion. This kind of circularity, it's indicated through bold arrows. The circularity in California is getting increasingly tight as we are moving to direct potable reuse. And so the concern for a contaminant like 1,4-dioxane that's mobile and hard to treat is particularly concerning. So we published 2 papers in the last few years that solidified the potential for consumer products to contribute to the waste stream and can potentially contaminate drinking water. And those links are hopefully popping into the chat as well. So then one more piece on exposure is through drinking water. So the EPA had a unregulated contaminants monitoring rule 3 in 2013 to 2015, which required analysis of, among other contaminants, 1,4-dioxane in public drinking water systems. That data is plotted here in the map. They provided a reference concentration, which is really just a screening value that EPA provided that represents a 1 in 1 million cancer risk as determined by US EPA's Integrated Risk Information System. The blue dots are those below that 0.35 reference concentration micrograms per liter, and the red dots are those above that concentration. Now, I did want to add that we definitely understand that historical releases of 1,4-dioxane, including improper disposal of industrial solvents, is a main driver of 1,4-dioxane contamination in drinking water, primarily, especially in California. So not saying that consumer products are the primary driver of this contamination, but it does indicate potential for exposure to 1,4-dioxane and potential for aggregate exposure as well. So if you look at where these detections of 1,4-dioxane are occurring, the table to the left is the counties with at least one detection. The table to the right is counties with at least one detection of 1,4-dioxane in drinking water above that reference concentration. And the population of these counties account for over half of the population of California. And this indicates the potential for widespread exposure throughout the state, including from drinking water as well as product use. So now I'll get into the potential for significant or widespread adverse impacts from these exposures. So same slide, different title, a little bit of a different point. So with a bit of a different angle, counties containing over half of the state's residents have detections of 1,4-dioxane at least somewhere within them in the drinking water over the US EPA's reference level, which does indicate some potential for concern there. We also are concerned about the disproportionate impact of vulnerable populations. So we've overlaid those detections with a mapping tool, CalEnviroscreen out of OEHA, Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. So CalEnviroscreen is a mapping tool to help identify California communities that are especially vulnerable to pollution's effects. So we overlaid those two data sets. The blue is communities that are considered to be less vulnerable, and the more you get towards the orange, they're considered to be more vulnerable. And if you zoom in, you can clearly see that the drinking water detections above the reference level, particularly in the Southern California, kind of Los Angeles region, tend to be found in the most vulnerable communities, as indicated by CalEnviroscreen. And that raises concern about disproportionate impact to these vulnerable populations. Additionally, there's concern about sensitive stop populations, particularly children. We know that it's present, 1,4-dioxane is present in children's products. Children have different product use patterns. They have higher skin to surface area ratio, and they have increased diffusion through the skin. Additionally, workers can use some of these products all day, like manual dishwashing detergent, someone who's washing dishes for their job all day, or someone who's shampooing all day, like in a salon, might be exposed to 1,4-dioxane all day in these settings. And some modeling has indicated that in some situations, this could result in an exceedance of OEHA's no significant risk level for cancer, which is based on a 1 in 100,000 lifetime risk. In addition, those with liver disease may be particularly sensitive to the impacts of exposure to 1,4-dioxane. And then finally, but not least, impacts to water agencies is a major concern with 1,4-dioxane in these products that go down the drain. We know that there's widespread contribution of 1,4-dioxane to the waste stream from consumer products. I referenced those two papers that we've published on this a few slides ago. This slide is taken from one of those papers, and it shows this concentration that's kind of widespread in both municipal wastewater effluent, which is the black box and whisker plot, as well as the septic system effluent, which is the red one. Additionally, we know that standardized treatments are ineffective in removing 1,4-dioxane from these waste streams, and that specialized treatment is costly. It's costly financially to spend the money on it, and it's also costly in terms of energy treatment. Energy required. We're particularly concerned about wastewater treatment plants and water reclamation plants that are generating recycled water, and the effort that they're going to have to go through to remove 1,4-dioxane and meet their permit requirements and keep 1,4-dioxane at levels they need to continue to create and generate recycled water to meet California's water goals. So to just further emphasize this point, this is a slide and a plot from Ann Heil at the LA County Sanitation District, who's since retired, but she was a pivotal point in bringing this issue up for us. And this is a slide that she presented at our workshop back in 2019. So on the x-axis is different water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants within their district, and on the y-axis is the concentration of 1,4-dioxane. And the different color bars are as you move through the treatment process, go from raw, primary, secondary to tertiary. And what you can see here is that as you move through the treatment process, and these are treatment plants that are employing the highest standard level of treatment in wastewater treatment plants, you can see that the concentration of 1,4-dioxane is really not changing. And this is just emphasizing that a more advanced treatment is really needed to remove 1,4-dioxane in wastewater treatment. So the summary of our concern: potential for exposure to 1,4-dioxane from personal care and cleaning products during product use, as well as from end-of-life contributions to recycled water and drinking water, as well as the potential for significant or widespread adverse impacts to children, workers, those with liver disease, vulnerable communities in areas with 1,4-dioxane contaminated water, as well as water treatment plant agencies generating recycled water. So we did want to highlight that as we mentioned, that we will be doing individual priority products based on our overall basis of personal care and cleaning products that we've put forth with this priority product profile. The first two that we are proposing to go forward with are shampoo containing 1,4-dioxane and manual dishwashing detergents containing 1,4-dioxane. So those you might use in a sink, not those you would use like in a dishwashing machine. We're also considering limits on the ingredients to narrow the scope. This is particularly true for something like shampoo. There are a lot of shampoos out there, and to really hone in on those that are with the highest contamination of 1,4-dioxane, we're considering narrowing the scope to just those with something like ethoxylated sulfated substances, which we know have some of the highest concentrations of 1,4-dioxane. So any thoughts on that would be certainly appreciated. And we'll plan to begin drafting rulemaking documents on that, and would initiate rulemaking in 2025. So just a little bit more, we wanted to get a little bit into setting the alternatives analysis threshold. I know that can be a little bit, where people can be unsure about that, so wanted to get a little bit into how we set the AAT. So the alternatives analysis threshold, as we've said, when a chemical is present, it's something that we have to set. When it's set as a contaminant, it's something we have to set. Manufacturers of products with 1,4-dioxane concentrations below the AAT are exempt from the alternatives analysis requirements, as we've said. And you can instead submit an alternatives analysis threshold notification. And that's where you're essentially certifying to us that the concentration of 1,4-dioxane is present in the product below the AAT. This AAT value is not necessarily risk-based or a health-based determination. There are a large number of factors that go into it. So I wanted to give you the different factors that we considered in setting it for this particular case. We looked at other product level regulations. It's not regulated in products federally, but at the state level, we do know that the New York legislation took effect in 2023. The 1 ppm in household cleansing products, 1 ppm in personal care products, and 10 ppm in cosmetics. So that was a good point to base our AAT off of. We also in 2019 released a document that outlined our work to estimate the contribution of consumer products to wastewater concentrations of 1,4-dioxane. So one big consideration in setting the AAT is how the level of 1,4-dioxane in consumer products impacts 1,4-dioxane in the waste stream and California's ability to generate and use recycled water, as we talked about. So we know there's a notification level in California, and many permits currently restrict 1,4-dioxane to 1 microgram per liter in recycled water or drinking water. Additionally, the EPA reference level is below that at 0.35 micrograms per liter. And so future thresholds could potentially be lower than the current 1 microgram per liter notification level. We don't know, but there's the possibility. So the table below that shows different assumed concentrations of 1,4-dioxane in products on the far left, and the resulting concentrations of 1,4-dioxane in the waste stream if all products were at that level. So there's a lot of details and assumptions behind this, including our efforts that show that consumer products make up a considerable portion of the 1 microgram per liter concentration of 1,4-dioxane in wastewater effluent. But the take-home point is that only when products are down below this 1 ppm level do we see the 1,4-dioxane in the waste stream dip below this 0.35 microgram per liter. So this kind of aligns with the 1 ppm level that we're seeing from New York. And because of that, we're proposing the alternatives analysis threshold of 1 ppm. So if we decide a different AAT is appropriate for a specific priority product in the future, we will provide the rationale at the time of proposing the regulation, and there will be opportunity for public comment at that time. And then just a note on the analysis of 1,4-dioxane. 1,4-dioxane is analytically challenging. We certainly know that. However, in the last few years since we first started this work, recent GCMS methods to detect 1,4-dioxane at or below 1 ppm in consumer products have come out. We've released one, Castor et al. In 2021, Fernando et al. In 2021 from New York have released one as well as the Palumbo et al. 2023 publication on analysis of 1,4-dioxane in cleaning products. And all of these methods have shown the ability to analyze 1,4-dioxane sufficiently below 1 ppm that we think that the 1 ppm AAT is certainly doable. Our regulations will include method performance criteria for submission of laboratory data. So these are criteria that will guide any data that will be submitted to comply with the AAT. And the draft is available of the method performance criteria in the profile that we've released. Next steps, as we've mentioned, our comment period ends September 3rd, so please provide comments. We will incorporate the feedback and begin and conduct our external scientific peer review. As I mentioned, we plan to initiate the rulemaking on our first 2 priority products out of this work, shampoo and manual dishwashing detergent, in 2025. Just wanted to add a ton of acknowledgements on this work. As Robin mentioned, this has been many years of work. Lots of people have been involved in it, and we just really appreciate all the effort that has gone in to get us where we are today. And then for comments, like I said, please go to CalSafer. Hopefully the link is in the chat. And for questions, please feel free to reach out to our email address at saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov. Jen?
Thank you, Ann Cooper. We will take this time for our Q&A session to answer any clarifying questions before the public comment period. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in your question. If you would like to verbally ask a question, click the raise hand button and we will call on you. Ask one question at a time. We will not be using the chat function. If you are calling in, press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to unmute. And it looks like we have a few people who have their hand raised and also typed in questions. So let's start with the raised hands. Tony, go. You had your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question. Tony, are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, let me go on to the next person. And Tony, we can come back to you. We have Delcy Organza. Go ahead and ask your question. Delcy? You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay, let me go ahead and go to the typed in questions. We have a question from Jennifer Bopp. If you are testing a product that is dilutable, do you test after the product is diluted or the concentrated version?
My assumption is that you would test the product that you offer for sale on the market.
Okay. The next question we have, as most companies have already reformulated their product in these categories to meet NY state limits, would it be possible to submit one notification for a company rather than on an individual product basis stating that products are less than 1 ppm? If we are required to submit for each product and for all new products being launched, it would be a potentially large regulatory burden. If we can provide evidence of our program to show compliance with the 1 ppm limit for our US products overall, it would be much easier to comply.
I'm not sure if Andrea or Kelly or someone has any thoughts on that more compliance side of things, or Christine.
I did send a question to our management of our compliance program. And as soon as I get an answer back from them, I'll respond to that question.
But also please reach out to us and we can continue to engage, including at the rulemaking work. So we'll have, this is our pre-regulatory workshop. And when we have, when we propose the rulemaking language and everything like that for these specific products, we'll have an additional workshop and we can have additional conversations as well about this. So please
Thank you.
reach out.
I'll just jump in. I'm Andre Algazi. I lead the Chemical and Product Evaluation branch. And I think it really, Ann Cooper makes a good point as far as the reporting would be kind of dependent on how we define the specific product. So just to be clear, this document is broader than an individual priority product that we would identify through a separate, rulemaking action. So it seems to me, but we should verify that if a company was producing multiple products of a given type, and there was some documentation that, all of them, either by testing raw materials or supply chain documentation would be below the threshold. I think that would work, and it really would depend on how we wrote the regulation. But our intention isn't to create extra work. We just need to make sure that we're clear in how to document.
And if a company does make more than one differing type of product, we would require an alternatives analysis threshold or an alternatives analysis for each of those differing types of products. Whether they make multiple of the same type of product, I'm still awaiting an answer on that from our compliance team.
But differing types of products would be different rulemaking actions likely. So
Yes,
Potentially, depending on how we group it, yeah.
so hopefully we were able to answer part of your question.
We'll get back to you. Thank you, panelists. The next question is from Tom Lewandowski. Do you have any data indicating relative exposure potential from products versus environmental sources?
Hi, Tom. I'm not sure if you mean environmental sources like drinking water. We definitely know that drinking water is the dominant source of exposure to people. When their drinking water is contaminated, that is the dominant source of exposure to 1,4-dioxane. That's that Dawson et al. Paper that we published. But consumer products is part of that aggregate exposure, so that is part of our concern. And then the other part of our concern is the contribution of 1,4-dioxane to the waste stream. And the interference of California's ability to generate recycled water. But we do know that drinking water is the dominant source of exposure to people. If that's the right answer, let me know if not. That's not my answer.
Thank you, Ann Cooper. Next question. Does shampoo also include pet shampoo?
We do now have a pet category in our work plan. I don't think it would fall. Andre, do you have a more?
I feel like, given that we started this work under sort of the heading of personal care, beauty and personal care products. I think unless we were to, I would consider pet shampoo to be a separate product, and we probably need to identify it separately. However, as Ann Cooper points out, we do have a pet products category in a draft work plan. I don't know that we have any data on 1,4-dioxane in pet shampoo currently. So it wasn't what was driving this work.
But if someone has data on 1,4-dioxane in pet shampoo, please share it. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. Tom Lewandowski has a follow-up or another question. So for the possible shampoo and dishwashing detergent products, is the primary concern impacts on water supplies, although direct consumer exposure could be possible?
Yeah, pretty much. So our 2019 thing that we released, as well as our profile, we were able to calculate the contribution of shampoo, dishwasher detergents, laundry, things like that down the drain. So we showed that those have down the drain releases, as well as the calculation of those in more occupational setting use of those products could contribute to personal exposures as well.
Christine, did you want to add on to that?
No, Ann Cooper answered it quite well.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Katie Montgomery. What are the steps associated with an alternative assessment threshold notification? Would you need to provide it by SKU? Is testing required?
So there's two, in terms of the is testing required, there's two means of kind of certifying that your products are below this AAT, be it 1 or something else. You can provide testing data, assuming that it meets the method performance criteria that we've outlined in the profile, and that would also be included in the regulations. Or you could provide certificates of analysis of any ingredients that are used in your product that are likely to contain 1,4-dioxane. So for example, your surfactant suppliers, they included a C of A that indicated the concentration of 1,4-dioxane in your surfactants. And then you would need to do the calculations to calculate out what the final concentration of 1,4-dioxane is expected to be in the final product that you sell. If you do that calculation and show that 1,4-dioxane is expected to be below 1 ppm, that's another means of certifying and showing that you meet and you're below that AAT level. So those are the two ways of showing that you meet the AAT level. In terms of down to the SKU, that I'm not 100% sure on. Andre?
I just wanted to kind of circle back to the previous question. I think that using that certificates of analysis could be a way to potentially identify cover multiple kind of products made by the same
Yeah.
manufacturer. As far as down to the SKU, I think it needs to be I think ultimately we're going to just need to know, it needs to be clear to us what's covered by the notification. So however is you can accomplish that. We haven't, in our previous regulations where we've identified an AAT, I don't think we've gotten into that you need to report a SKU. So I don't know that.
Yeah, we're currently not requiring that companies provide the SKU. And I'd also like to point out that we do have some excellent training videos on our website that explain the AAT notification process. Maybe someone could put a link to it in the chat.
Hopefully that one.
Thank you, panelists. Next question is from Melissa Louise Just. When will rulemaking on cleaners be initiated?
So just to reiterate, the profile that we've released is for all personal care and cleaning products, but we will be taking pieces of that and doing individual rulemakings kind of as we're able. And the first two that we're proposing to do is shampoo and manual dishwashing detergent. And we hope to initiate rulemaking on both of those next year.
Thank you, Ann Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. Isn't the federal government considering a risk evaluation for 1,4 under TSCA that is set to be released this year? If so, how will that impact your activities?
So our process is really different than most other regulations. However, we are always considering other laws and evaluate those as we go through our process. This is a preliminary stage though, so we welcome written comments.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is the AAT relevant for all products sold into California? For example, not just personal care, cosmetics, etc., like in New York State?
It would be relevant for any products listed in the rulemaking that we initiate. So so the shampoo and the manual dishwashing detergent, when we initiate that rulemaking, once that goes into effect, that AAT, and it's not a limit, it's just a threshold. If you're below that threshold, then to comply with our regulations, you would be exempt from the alternatives analysis requirements and can instead submit this alternatives analysis threshold notification where you just certify that you're below that threshold. And if you're above that threshold, you are not exempt from the alternatives analysis requirements. But the AAT, if that makes sense, the AAT itself only applies to the products that we have put through the rulemaking process.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the two that had their raised hands earlier and see if we can get through the technical difficulties there. So Tony Go, did you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question? How about Delcy Berganza? Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the typed in questions. The next question, will the regulation pertain to only finished products or to individual ingredients?
Finished products sold in California.
Finished products, okay, thank you. Next question from Stephanie Vivanco. For any product that is listed as a priority product, do all the manufacturers of those priority products have to send an AAT?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The answer was yes. Next question Alicia Franklin, what were the challenges with finding multiple products that were marketed to Black communities and people with coiled hair?
Thanks. That's a great question. It's something I've really struggled with. So back in 2020, we did a lot of shopping at a variety of different types of stores, and we found variety of products, variety of shampoos marketed to people with coiled hair. And those are sampled. It's just hard to tell. All those points on the graph overlap. So there are multiple shampoos represented there. We did find some bar soaps that were marketed to African Americans, but those didn't meet our criteria. We needed to have liquid products. And I even worked with our Office of Environmental Equity and couldn't identify any cleaning products that were specifically marketed to African Americans. If you have thoughts on products, and certainly I think we'd love to do it. I would personally love to do another round of testing. I don't know if I can commit the department to that, but it's something that we are concerned about and would like to have better coverage of. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Andre, do you have your hand raised?
I do. I just wanted to add a clarification to the answer to Stephanie Vidanko's question about do all manufacturers of those priority products have to send an AAT? So that is yes, if the product has less than the threshold concentration of 1,4-dioxane. No, if it's above that concentration, instead they need to submit the preliminary alternatives analysis. So just for clarification, it only applies to manufacturers of products that contain 1,4-dioxane below the threshold.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Andre. The next question is from Katie Montgomery. What is the definition of a different product type? If the fragrance of a shampoo changes, is that considered a different product?
I think there's a lot of questions around this, like how specific to get on this AATN. And I think we'll take that as a action item to go back and develop some guidance and maybe have another quick workshop or some sort of thing that we can send out and provide a little more guidance on this, unless anyone has something that they can.
Well, I was going to ask, maybe Christine remembers how we're handling that with, we recently listed nail products with toluene as a priority product, and there's an AAT for toluene, and a lot of the products that are encompassed by that listing come in various varieties, like different colors of coatings and things. So I believe it just needs to be clear. This is one where I think using certificates of analysis could help. And I see Christine might have something to add.
So while, like, Andre's using the example of nail products, so nail products that are the same brand but different colors are technically different products. Excuse me. And same with if a fragrance changes in a shampoo, that would also be technically a different product. However, our compliance folks have been, building some of the trainings and process that we're doing in terms of submitting alternatives analysis thresholds, and I'm still awaiting their answers. So I apologize for that. This is a new part of our program, our compliance and enforcement efforts. And so I don't want to overstep, because we have a team of people who are putting together this process. And while I may not hear back from them today, if we do, we'll answer these questions. If not, we will probably send out some information that we can share with all the interested parties.
And like I said, we'll have a workshop when we propose the regulations, and we'll make sure to have a lot more information about it at that time.
Yeah,
So this
we will
is still
definitely have answers to these
Well,
questions.
and the answer is going to be
regulatory
based on.
workshop.
I'm sorry, Christine.
It's
And
okay.
maybe back over you. I was just going to say that this is not something that some unknowable thing. This is something we'll decide and specify as we're, regulating products with 1,4-dioxane.
Thank you very much. Next question. For those that sell B2B for consumer products, should we consider a higher threshold for 1,4-dioxane as a raw material for personal care products?
I'm not sure I completely understand. Does anyone else?
Well, I think you can have a higher concentration in a raw material, provided if your goal is to be below the alternatives analysis threshold and not do an alternatives analysis. You can, it's the concentration in the final product that
Yeah,
determines whether or not you need to do the alternatives analysis.
right. But please resubmit if that's not what you meant by that question.
Thank you. Next question is from Stephanie Vivanco. Will the list of ingredients that cause 1,4-dioxane impurities be listed for the 2 proposed priority products so manufacturers know whether they are required to provide documentation?
No, in the appendix of our profile, we have a list of surfactants and ethoxylated substances that are typically associated with 1,4-dioxane contamination that can be helpful. We ourselves don't have an exhaustive list of ingredients that are likely to be contaminated, but that might be a helpful starting point.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, did you want to add on to the question from Alyssa Franklin earlier?
Yeah, thank you so much. I forgot to say that when I do scan grocery stores now and big box stores for products that might have 1,4-dioxane, I do see a lot more liquid personal care products marketed towards African Americans. And so I do know that post 2020, there are a lot more products on the market, commonly on the market, I should say. But I just wanted to add that because I think it is important to say that I think the market has shifted in the past couple of years. Thanks.
Thank you for the clarification, Kelly. Next question. Are ingredient suppliers subject to this rule?
No, it's the manufacturers of the products.
Thank you.
As we define the product, yeah. I mean, the raw materials are products of, but we're talking about, in this case, it'd likely be shampoo and dish. So.
Thank you, Andre. Next question from Monica McDowell. If testing required is tied to published legislation, what post-legislature testing period will be provided? In other words, will we have a grace period to test?
Yeah, Andre.
Once the regulations, so just for kind of the timeline, if we initiate rulemaking in 2025, it will likely take about a year to complete the rulemaking. So then we're looking at sometime in 2026. So people will know that it's coming. Normally, regulations take effect on the first day of the quarter following their adoption. So it really depends on the finalizing date, but it may be like up to 15 months from public notice date to effective date. Once the regulations take effect, that starts the 60-day clock. And really that's the time frame you have between submitting your priority product notification saying, I make a product subject to this regulation and submitting your AAT notification 60 days, right?
Just to clarify, an alternatives analysis threshold notification is due at the same time as a preliminary alternatives analysis report. So essentially 180 days
yeah.
after the priority product notification.
I'm corrected. It was 180, not 60.
180
so
from the
there's-
effective date.
From the effective date.
Yes.
Thanks for the correction.
And then from that, it will take time for us to gear up and do compliance, purchasing products, do testing, things like that. So there will be some time. There's not necessarily some built-in grace period, but there will be some time.
But if you have 15 months to 6 months, it's a couple years, so hopefully that'll be enough time for people to, between public notice and having to submit, to get their information together.
Thank you. Next question from Stephanie Vivanco. Is the data you provided on 1,4-dioxane based on tap water samples from California? Have any samples been collected on bottled water?
Yes, so that unregulated contaminants monitoring rule 3 data is from EPA, and those are public drinking water systems. So that is tap water. I'm sure there is some bottled water. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I don't know about data in bottled water. It would be interesting, but I don't know about it off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Ann Cooper. Next question is from Kevin Hamilton. Is this solvent absolutely required for these products to work?
No, I will say this is one of the instances where I think everyone is in agreement that no one actually wants 1,4-dioxane in the products. It's unintentionally added. It's just there as a byproduct when they're making the surfactants. 1,4-dioxane is generated and just comes along for the ride. So there's just a lot of work that goes into removing the 1,4-dioxane from the surfactants or the products before they're sold. And that could be a tough task, but it's definitely unintentionally added and not something that anyone wants in the products. Oh, Chen, you're muted.
Thank you, Abel. Next question. How much of the content of an AAT notification can be protected as confidential business information?
I don't think our legal folks are here. So I'm not sure if you have questions on that and you think that there might be parts of your AAT notification that could be confidential business information. I would say you could reach out to us and email us and we could engage on that. Anyone else?
Well, I think this probably the Article 10 or the protection, the information that to document that something is trade secret would apply. Let me give you the citation. It's Article 9 of our regulations. I can drop a link in.
About what they have to provide to document it, to substantiate it.
Thank you. Next question. Would all shampoos be affected under proposed rulemaking? For example, will the DTSC proposed regulation affect cosmetic drugs, i.e. anti-dandruff shampoos?
We're still formulating the exact definition, so if you have thoughts on that, please provide them. Theoretically, it could, but please provide any thoughts and we'll continue to take those in.
Thank you. Next question is from Melissa Louise Just. Is an AAT certification statement required if a 1,4-dioxane is not in finished product?
That's, yeah, it's tricky. I guess it depends. Yeah, I'm not sure. If you have thoughts on that, it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, if you know that 1,4-dioxane is not in the finished product, then it does not fall within the scope of our regulations. Essentially, the final product for 1,4-dioxane with in cleaning or personal care products, if you know it contains contamination of 1,4-dioxane, then you are subject to our regulation and you have a priority product. If you know that 1,4-dioxane is not in the product, you are not required to submit an alternatives analysis threshold notification or an AA.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question. For AAT notification, it was mentioned that COAs are needed for ingredients likely to include 1,4-dioxane. Can you specify what ingredients fall into this category?
So kind of to this end to the previous point, I will say if there's any kind of ethoxylated anything in your products, my assumption would be that you would assume that 1,4-dioxane is probably in there, particularly with the analytical capacity that we've got now. We can get down pretty low. So unless you just absolutely have no ethoxylated anything in there, the assumption is probably that 1,4-dioxane is somewhere in there. The C of A's, that is one option for compliance. You can do that approach, or you can just test your products. Either way, whichever is easier for you. As I said, there's a appendix in our profile that indicates the types of ingredients that are likely to be contaminated with 1,4-dioxane. They said these ethoxylated surfactants, the sulfated ethoxylated surfactants, things like that. But we don't have an exhaustive list of ingredients that are contaminated with 1,4-dioxane. Now, my guess is the industry probably has a much better idea of that. I know there's been so much work on 1,4-dioxane in the last few years. So hopefully there's a lot better understanding of which ingredients are contaminated.
Thank you, Ann Cooper. Next question is from Kevin Reiner. For clarity, and my apologies if I missed this, are only priority products with identified ingredients of concern, for example, shampoos with ethoxylated surfactants, subject to obligations, or all priority products, for example, all shampoos?
So that's what we're considering for shampoos in particular, because there are so many shampoos and we want to target the ones that are most likely to be contaminated with 1,4-dioxane. And in that case, it would only be shampoos with ethoxylated surfactants or ethoxylated sulfated surfactants that would be considered priority products, and not all shampoos if we were to take that route. Like I said, we're still finalizing the product definition, so any thoughts on that are certainly appreciated, but that's currently the proposal that we're thinking of to just narrow the scope a bit because there's so many out there.
Thank you, Ann Cooper. Next
Oh.
question. Oh,
I was just
go
gonna,
ahead.
I just had a thought with respect to, if a product had ethoxylated surfactant ingredients, and if we were to define what, as Vancouver pointed out, the ability to quantify 1,4-dioxane at lower concentrations continues to evolve. I mean, if there's what we call a practical quantitation limit that we were to sort of specify, then I suppose that products that were below that wouldn't, I'm not quite sure how that would come into play, but it's possible they, you wouldn't have to, even if you're. I might be overthinking this, because if it doesn't contain 1,4-dioxane, it's not included in the definition. So ultimately, it's going to be the judgment of the product manufacturer.
Thank you, Andre. Next question. Can you help us understand why we need to provide data if we are below the 1 ppm threshold? The AATN will be a large undertaking for companies.
It's a requirement in the regulations. Is the short of it.
That was put in the framework that was adopted in 2013. That is a good.
And just to add to it, like doing the analysis or providing a C of A, a certificate of analysis, helps us to understand that essentially you're applying for an exemption from completing an AA. And so if you choose not to, conduct analysis or provide C of A's, then essentially you're required to conduct an alternatives analysis. So essentially providing the data with an AAT notification is actually much simpler than conducting an AA. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Christine. Next questions from Jiaru Zhang. If the level of 1,4-dioxane change in a priority product, does a new AAT need to be submitted, if applicable? And if the new level exceeds the AAT, then does an AA need to be conducted?
If the level changes but does not exceed the AAT, then it does not need to be resubmitted. As long as you're below the AAT, you're fine. If it does go above the AAT, then you have to notify us. There's language in the regulations around that. And then I think there's a certain grace period, and then I think the preliminary AA becomes due. I can't remember the grace period, so don't quote me on that one. We can get you a specific answer on that, and we will have that one available unless someone has it at their fingertips. We can have that for the regulatory workshop as well. But yes, if you go above the AAT, you definitely have to let us know. Christine, did you want?
And if it's a reformulated product, you would need to submit a new either AATN to request an exemption. Or as Ann Cooper already said, if it's over 1 part per million, then you would have to essentially submit an alternatives analysis.
Thank you, Christine. Next question. Will these questions and answers be compiled in a Q&A on your website?
We can work on that. It sounds like that would be really helpful. So we can look into doing that.
And also I wanted to mention that a recording of this workshop will be available on the website as well. Okay, next question from Robin Newcold. Can you clarify again when industry would need to comply? Is it in 2026?
Yeah, so if we initiate the regulations in 2025, the earliest that they would be effective, or they would probably be effective in around 2026, because it takes about a year for the rulemaking process. So once they go into effect, the priority product notification, which is the first step, is just where you tell us you have a priority product. That's due 60 days from that effective date. And if the alternatives analysis threshold notification is the route that you're taking, that is due 180 days from the effective date, as well as the preliminary alternatives analysis, if that's the route you're taking. That's also due 180 days from the effective date. So 2026 is the earliest that either of those would be due, depending on how long the rulemaking process takes.
Thank you, Ann Cooper. Next question. If the AAT of 1 ppm is adopted into the rulemaking, what would be the expected date of enforcement or finalization? 2026?
I think I covered that just in the last question. If not, please resubmit. And just to clarify, the AAT is not like a level that you must meet. It's just a level if you don't want an AA, if you don't want to do an alternatives analysis report, you would need to be below that. But yeah, if you have further questions than what we just answered, let me know.
Thank you, Ann Cooper.
And let me expand on that a little, just so we're clear. If you know your product has 1,4-dioxane in it, whether it's above or below 1 part per million, after rulemaking, a product containing 1,4-dioxane, whichever product is listed through rulemaking, is a priority product. So all manufacturers of, for example, manual dishwashing soap that contain 1,4-dioxane are subject to our requirements. As soon as the rulemaking becomes effective, then you need to follow the timelines that are in our regs. Whether it's submitting an AAT notification or submitting a preliminary alternatives analysis. Basically, it's 180 days from the date of effectiveness, which is what Ann Cooper said, but I just wanted to make sure it's clear to folks. If you're less than 1 part per million, you still produce a priority product. However, you can submit an AAT notification for exemption.
Thank you for clarifying, Christine. Next question. Will the company disclosures for products that are under the threshold be publicly disclosed? Will the AA for those that are over the threshold be disclosed?
Yeah, so we publish all submittals on our CalSafer website unless you claim trade secret or confidential business information. And Andre, I don't know if that got in the chat, but we have requirements on what must be submitted if you want to claim that. But otherwise, we do disclose and publish all submissions.
I did put a link into the section of the regulations about
Thanks.
documenting if you're claiming trade secret.
Okay, thank you. Next question. You indicated that 1,4-dioxane is a contaminant in water. Water is used as an ingredient in these proposed products. Will these products therefore need to submit an AAT or AATN?
That's a really good question. I think that would be up to the product manufacturers if there's a chance that you have 1,4-dioxane in your products.
Thank you. Next question is from Kevin Hamilton. Why isn't the product simply run through a reverse osmosis or one of several filter media that can easily remove it?
I do know removing it at the product phase is very hard, and they tend to remove it more at the surfactant generation phase. But beyond that, perhaps one of the industry, we can connect you with someone that might have more information. We talk a little bit about it in the profile about the different routes, but from what I understand, they try and do more of controlling the chemistry and then stripping it from the surfactant itself. Tends to be a bit easier than dealing with the complexity at the product stage when you've got a lot more going on to try and remove it. I don't know if some of these would even fit through our filter bin measure. But yeah, I know removing it's a challenge, something the industry's been working on.
Thank you. Next question. Is only a certificate of analysis accepted from a supplier of a 1,4-dioxane containing product for a notification, or can a supplier declared specification be sufficient? For example, they declare the product contains 10 ppm max 1,4-dioxane, and we use the max 10 ppm in our formula calculation.
I think yes, if they say up to 10 ppm, you can just use 10 ppm. Jennifer, am I reading that right?
Yeah, I think that, so a certificate of analysis entails some analytical testing that needs to be done in order to verify that the data is valid in terms of quality. And so that is one of the requests for the certificate of analysis. A declaration from a supplier may or may not have the testing, and so we need to make sure that the declaration of below a certain ppm is valid. And so that's on the manufacturer to determine, the raw materials that they're purchasing.
But if they do say 10 ppm max, as long as that's valid in terms of the testing, then you can just use that 10 ppm in your calculations.
Correct.
You don't have to know that it's 5.8 or whatever it is. You can just assume 10.
No, you can do
calculate it
the calculation. I think my concern was more of the difference between a certificate of analysis and then declaration of supplier. Those are different things in terms of analytical testing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next question. Is the brand owner company name on product label who is responsible to submit AAT notification or report, depending on which is applicable? In other words, if one company manufactures the product and another is responsible for the marketing, sales, and distribution, in this case, the manufacturer has no control or knowledge of where a product is sold.
Pretty sure it's the manufacturer, but look at Kelly or Andre, if I'm
It
sure
kinda
this came up
goes-
with tires.
It goes to the definition of manufacturer in our framework, which I'm scrolling. Here it is. Means any person who manufactures a product that is subject to requirements of this chapter, or any person who controls the manufacturing process, or specifies the use of chemicals to be included in the product. So the manufacturer is, and we have this definition of responsible entity, but when you're doing an alternatives analysis, it's generally going to be the manufacturer or consortium of manufacturers, and it would be the person who meets the person or persons who meet that definition. I can also paste that in There's also a definition of what it means to manufacture.
Thank you, Andre. Next question is from Tom Lewandowski. So for the possible shampoo and dishwashing detergent products, is the primary concern impacts on water supplies, although direct consumer exposure could be possible?
I think we already did this one.
Oh, sorry
it
about
was.
that.
No, it's okay. No worries.
Next question. Would there be a differentiation between consumer manual dishwash versus institutional manual dishwash ingredients?
We're, like I said, still refining the definition, so any feedback is certainly appreciated, but I think the thought is definitely to include the institutional detergents as well, particularly given the concerns about occupational settings and the long-term exposure for those who are using those products.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions typed in, and there are no raised hands. Any other questions for this Q&A session? Okay, if not, then we will take a 5-minute break and then go into the comment period session. So let's go ahead and take a break and we'll come back at 10:23. See you in 5 minutes. Welcome back. We are now in the public comment session. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Thank you, Ann Cooper. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type in your comment. If you would like to verbally state your comment, click the raise hand button and we will call on you. If you are calling in, press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to unmute. You may also submit written comments via our CalSafer website or email to saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov. Keep in mind that the public comment period closes at 11:59 p.m. on September 3rd, 2024. So give it a minute or two. Right now, I'm not seeing any comments. Okay, so it doesn't look like there are any comments during this session. Sorry, there's a raised hand. Brennan Georgiani, go ahead and unmute yourself and state your comment.
Yes, actually, quick question. Are those on the phone able to provide comment?
Yes, they can, yes.
Okay, those who are dialed in. I'm on the Zoom application, but I know there's some folks that are dialed in who are trying to raise their hand.
They should, if they press *9 on their phone,
Okay.
they can raise their hand, yes.
All right. I'm connecting with a colleague who says she has pushed *9. I was trying to help troubleshoot.
Sure. I can take a minute. So far, I'm not seeing any raised hands other than yours.
Okay. If you don't mind giving just a second, she's going to try to reconnect with computer
Sure.
audio. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Of course. Just want to make sure if you're on the phone and you want to raise your hand, press *9. Here we are. Marie Gargas.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead and offer
Glad-
your comment.
Appreciate that. Good morning, and thank you to DTSE for holding this workshop and helping resolve some of the technical issues with trying to provide comment. I am Marie Gargas, Senior Director of Regulatory and International Affairs here at the American Cleaning Institute. And for those who don't know, ACI, we're the Association for Detergent and Cleaning Product Manufacturers, which includes their suppliers and packaging manufacturers and other specialty chemical producers. And we were glad to have shared information on 1,4-dioxane and the cleaning products industry with DTSE, at least as far back as 2019. So then and now, we really appreciate your continued stakeholder engagement. We know you're trying to address the health of your communities alongside policy goals, such as recycled water to meet California's water demands. So we really want to thank DTSE also for recognizing or making clear at least 5 things that you had in the draft profile. As we heard here today, it's recognized that 1,4-dioxane is a byproduct, not intentionally added. We appreciate the recognition that product concentrations have been decreasing as our industry achieves product content limits set in New York, for example. There was recognition in the draft profile that concentrated products have environmental benefits. And we also appreciate the profile stating that you're not asserting that these products can't be used safely and that consumer products are not always the largest contributor of 1,4-dioxane to wastewater. Across the products, it appears DTSE did a really extensive job of collecting those 1,4-dioxane concentrations. And unfortunately, those manufacturer reported 1,4-dioxane concentrations and products in Table 5 are from no later than June 2023. And so, they don't reflect those further advances to meet New York State's December 2023 deadline. From your remarks today, we appreciate and know you understand this. And we likewise recognize it's a snapshot in time and things are evolving. But with even more cleaning product concentrations below 1 part per million, we know that out-of-date data will have implications for aspects of the draft profile. And as we look at that shrinking list of product concentrations or cleaning products that have active waivers in New York, those maximum concentrations there in those waivers are well below those in Table 5. We do have some concerns that despite industry's compliance efforts with New York's law and those efforts to reduce the presence of 1,4-dioxane in cleaning products to the greatest extent possible, those notification requirements we've been talking about here, just alone in California, would create a significant regulatory burden. For example, as we've talked about, that would include demonstration and certification of product concentrations, even with 1,4-dioxane as a contaminant present below the alternatives analysis threshold that's currently proposed at 1 part per million. DTSE, of course, would also need resources to manage a significant volume of submissions. So if we looked, for example, at Table 6 in the draft profile, in that 2013 to 2015 period, there were almost 900 reported dish detergent and soap manual products and over 39,000 personal care and cleaning products total. So as you noted in response to a question earlier, what's in the regs is what's in the regs. But that said, we really appreciate that DTSE is considering measures that would further narrow the scope, which would further narrow our collective resources. The Q&A period was terrific, and I would definitely share with our members and make use of a Q&A document that captured all of this on your website. I think that would be very helpful for clarity on this as everyone is developing comments with that comment period open. We also welcome insights on how implementation would be approached and encourage DTSE to consider a suite of methods for demonstrating compliance, which of course would include those finished concentrated products. And so we'll submit comments. They'll recommend analytical method performance criteria that aligns with our recommendations to New York's DEC, which, as we know, is still finalizing their regulations. And we'll also touch on the carcinogenicity mode or modes of actions for which research was presented at an earlier public meeting. We also think it's important that those currently representative but not exclusive definitions are made really clear, if when DTSC proposes the exact priority product definition in future rulemakings. So, our members, of course, manufacture cleaning products that Californians use every day, which means we really appreciate these opportunities and hope DSC will contemplate our written comments and find them useful. Thank you again for the workshop and for allowing me to provide those comments.
Thank you very much, Marie, for your comments. Any others? Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and end the comment session. And Cooper, can you get to the next slide, please? We will now end today's public comment session. I would like to introduce Andre Algazi to give our closing remarks. Andre?
Thank you, Chin. I'd like to thank all of you for participating in today's virtual public workshop. I'd like to thank our excellent presenters. And as you will have noticed, we are very open to your comments and questions and really value them. And we consider all public comments that come in, both at these workshops and in writing through our CalSafer portal, and we really rely on them to try to get our regulations right. So if you have thoughts or information that you think we should consider, please do submit them. If you haven't already done so, you can submit comments through our CalSafer portal, and we still have a couple of more weeks. The comment period closes on September 3rd. So as we've discussed today, we do intend to initiate rulemaking for our first two 1,4-dioxane containing consumer products in 2025, and those will be shampoos and manual dishwashing detergents. So your comments now will help us refine those proposed regulations. Our goal is to try to get them as close to right before we go to public notice. So anything you have to offer with regard to, how things should be defined, the chemical, I think chemical is pretty well defined, the product, the AAT, things like that would be helpful. So thanks in advance for your help. Thanks for being here today. Please do submit comments, and we look forward to talking with you as we move forward with our work on 1,4-dioxane. So thanks very much, and I'll hand it back to Chin.
Thank you, Andre. We really appreciate your attendance today and for the insightful Q&A and comments. Thank you all for attending. Have a good day. Bye-bye.